Welcome back. Well, the Jagersfontein Community Trust in the Free State's now confirmed it's going to sue the Mineral Resources Department for 30 billion rand. That's after the Tailings dam disaster there. It's all sludge and mud and sand and water tearing through the town, literally destroying everything in its path, taking so many people's lives that they had built up over many years with it. This entire issue does put a focus on the duties government has to try and protect people. The Chief Researcher for the Benchmarks Foundation is David van Wyk, and he's in our studio now. David, good afternoon. Thanks for coming through. I really appreciate it. Do you think the Trust has a strong case? Can they actually take a case around legality to the department? Can they hold the department legally responsible?
Well, I think they can. Tailings management is a very important issue. It's a very dangerous issue globally. Insurance companies refuse to insure tailings because of the dangers associated with them. We've had a couple of big tailings failures in South Africa in the past. This case is partly about that, but it's also partly about the fact that the Jagersfontein Community Trust applied to actually operate that mine in 2009, and they paid the department a lot of money to do so, 100,000 rands in a rehabilitation fund. And they never got the opportunity to do so because De Beer sold the mine and the tailings to another company. And so these people were left outside of that particular effort. And, this seems to be always the case in South Africa. When South Africans want to mine for themselves, it's always said, no, you can't do that. Step back. Let someone else come and do it for you. And it's that paternalistic approach that the Department of Mineral Resources have towards South Africans and towards South Africans who want to do things for themselves, because the ruling party feels it has to do things for other people. And so the group of people who came in at the time, the Super Kolong group in 2010, they linked up with some rather dubious people. They linked up with Johan Rupert, they linked up with Chris Potgieter and so on. And if you go to Jagersfontein mine now at the moment, it's nepotism of the highest degree. You have Johan Meyer, who's the manager. You have his wife, who is the personnel manager. You have his son, who is the consulting engineer. You have et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And many of the people who worked on Jagersfontein mine for many years under De Beers warned that the tailings was going to break. They warned over many months, and then on the day they warned 3 times, and they were simply ignored and told to go back to work. And 3 o'clock in the morning, the tailings started breaking. By 6 o'clock, the tailings had run through the community. And the community afterwards started speaking to the media and to outsiders, and the mine is now threatening disciplinary action against those workers who spoke to the media.
Sure. There are a lot of issues here.
Yeah.
Is there a legal duty on the department to make sure this was safe? Because we've heard from the Deputy Minister of Water Affairs, David van Wyk, a man with a complicated history, but he has said that there was actually an assessment done, and that they, as far as the water department were concerned, they had done everything. And there's this dispute over who's in charge of a tailings dam.
Well, I think that's sheer nonsense on the part of the department. That tailings is built on top of the confluence of 3 watersheds flowing right underneath it. There's a shallow aquifer 5 meters underneath it. You never build tailings on a wetland, basically. If you do build tailings on a wetland, it never dries out, and therefore it never stabilizes. So the possibility of it breaking is huge. And between 2009 and the present time, they absolutely raised that tailings massively. And the angle at which the tailings is standing and it's also on the slope, of course, and it's wet underneath. It's just a recipe for disaster. I don't know how the environmental management plans got accepted by the department. I don't know how the environmental impact assessments got accepted by the department. No engineer or environmentalist or compliance officer would have accepted building the tailings in that spot.
There's a case from years and years ago that the Mineral Resources Department's been quoting. I forget if it's 2007 or
2007, thereabouts. Yeah.
It's around a tailings dam, and this is where it gets complicated, because the tailings in the dam can have value. And so as I understand it, the argument was that the mine still owns them. Whereas the department wanted to control the tailings dam, they argued to make sure it was safe. I don't know how far they go with that argument.
Well, I think
is that really an issue?
I think the issue there is more complicated than that. The department wanted to get access to the tailings so that small-scale miners could mine there. It wasn't about the safety, and that's why De Beers took them to court. They said, no, these tailings still belong to us. We want to remine these tailings. But then in 2010, they sold the tailings and the mine to Super Kolong, and Super Kolong, together with these other partners that I've mentioned, and also Stargem from Dubai, started remining the tailings and then pumping the wet water into a very wet tailings already and raising the level of the tailings and therefore the level of risk to the community.
There's so many mines that are around the country that are dangerous in different ways. Some of them are dangerous because of a tailings dam like this one. Some of them are dangerous because they have empty pits. Some of them are dangerous just because they're there and because they're illegal miners, zamas, who will then mine them. And, I mean, I've spoken to people, I know you're an expert on this, but with all the will in the world, you're probably not going to be able to keep illegal miners from there unless you change the law, which is an issue. Do you think government can make all of these mines safe? Does the responsibility rest on them to do it?
Well, the regulations are there, the laws are there. You know, so I can't understand why they don't apply the law. That's the first thing. And why they allow companies to walk away from their responsibility and not closing mines properly and rehabilitating them properly. There are 6,000 of them that are abandoned, and more of them get abandoned every year. And that's because there are loopholes in the law. And we'll be discussing those loopholes at the Benchmarks conference over the next 2 days. What are the loopholes in the law? What are the loopholes that need to be fixed? But, you know, apart from that, we are a country that is moving away from large-scale industrial mining because the minerals are getting depleted. You have to plan for that. You have to plan for medium and smaller-scale mining, and we're not planning for medium and smaller-scale mining. So we are allowing towns like Stilfontein and Welkom and other towns just to collapse because we're not planning to make that shift that is necessary. And that's where the illegal mining comes in.
It's, in a way, you're making the point that if you're a member of the elite, a mining company, and you have a tie, you can do the application process and all the rest, you'll get the contract. The people who live there can't. They can't
get the contract because for some reason we don't think that smaller scale, medium scale mining is possible. We've been working with the department for the last 5 years to develop a white paper, and we've made huge submissions on that white paper for survival, small scale, medium scale mining. It's lying on the president's table. He should sign it.
This case that's now being brought by the Jagersfontein Trust, the Jagersfontein Community Trust, could really change the law then. I mean, if they win this case, if they win 30 billion rand, I mean, they're probably not going to get 30 billion rand. But if they are able to make the point, it could really change the way the department deals with this.
Well, if you look at that mine, between 1975 and 2009, it was under care and maintenance. It was doing nothing. How is that possible? Now when the community expresses an interest in the mine, the government and the mining companies say, no, you can't have it. Let's sell it to someone else instead. But they were happy for it to lie there for 34 years, doing nothing, and allowing the town to die. They call the town Spookdorp now, because there's nothing happening in that town. It's of great historical value, that town. It's got pristine 19th century buildings and things like that in it that could also generate an income for the community. But people say, no, but the community must just stay away. You know? So you are looking at this thing that can generate an income for the community, by the community, of the community, and you're just leaving it.
Thank you very much indeed, David van Wyk, Head of Research at the Benchmarks Foundation. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
That has so much still to look at.